average values coming out of this database for open ocean and mangroves and coral reefs. And these are actually values that are only partly captured in the market. Only between 25 and 30% is related to food provisioning and maybe some other tourism services that are captured in the current market system, but most of those services are not acknowledged, seen as free services: water quality regulation, influence on air quality, watershed protection, and all those very important services, and they are included in these values. So if you decide to convert an ecosystem, a tropical rainforest or a mangrove system, into something else, a plantation or a shrimp farm, actually this is the value you should be working with in terms of compensating people or the society at large, because it's mainly future generations and the poorer people who are paying kind of the difference or the loss of those values that you do not take into account at the moment that you destroy the system. And still, in many parts of the world, we have already converted most of our mangrove systems into housing or shrimp farming or crop growing, which may be very legitimate in some circumstances. Of course, you need land to grow food, but then be honest about all the costs and benefits, about all the trade-offs involved in that conversion. Just a recent study published in Nature a few years ago showed that this is still not the case. A real estate developer for tourism or recreational development in part of the coast in Mexico paid only $1,000 per hectare to the local municipality or the local landowner. And in that same study, it was calculated that the net present value, which is the capitalized annual value, up there you see $46,000 per hectare per year is the annual benefits you get from the system on a sustainable basis, discounted to current values or net present values, that gives you somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000, which was actually based on original research done in that particular paper. So there is a big discrepancy between the perceived value in the market of those ecosystems and what their real worth is to the local and the global community. And this picture consistently comes out of studies. This is published already a bit longer ago in 2002 in Science, comparing sustainable use of wetlands with converting it into farming, or sustainable forestry, converting it into small-scale farming in this case, mangroves compared to shrimp farming. And everywhere you see that the multifunctional sustainable use generates more benefits than the monofunctional use, if you could call it that. So this actually, the study was based on only 4 case studies where they could find sufficiently reliable data, and it brings me to the point that it's so urgently needed still to collect more original empirical data on the capacity of those ecosystems to provide ecosystem services. So while you are listening to the presentations that we will be starting in a moment, just think about some of the questions that are important and maybe to ask to the panel later on. How to bring this concept into practice and really make it work for conservation and sustainable development. It's maybe a bit strange actually if you know all this, all these values of the systems and what we lose when you convert it, but it's still not widely applied, and we are still, as we speak, destroying all those beautiful systems actually. So Bruce already mentioned that we have 4 presentations split in 2 main sessions. The first 2 will be about case studies, one in the Greater Mekong sub-region and the other one in Borneo. And then we have 2 presentations on networking programs. Then we will have a panel discussion, and now I realize I forgot something. I was planning to hand out comment cards, because often while you are listening, you get questions that pop up in your mind, and you might forget them by the time we get to the panel discussion. Yeah, I think I can organize them quickly. So I thought it might be good for you to write down the questions on this piece of paper, and then you can either hand them in for the panel to be discussed or present them yourself at the microphone. or if time doesn't allow, you can give them to us and we can work with them. Another reason for handing out the cards is that if you want to stay informed about these networks, you write down your email on that card. You can reach you afterwards. Okay, having said that, let me invite Sanand. Name is almost as difficult as mine. Speak about the Greater Mekong.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's certainly a privilege to be here and to share with you our work that we've been doing the Greater Mekong sub-region. I think maybe I should say up front that this is perhaps a case study of not of how we've used ecosystem service values, but a case study of a program that's come to the realization that ecosystem service values are essential for moving on with the work that we've been doing so far. So having said that, let me explain to you what I'm going to talk about is a program that the ADB has been supporting in the Greater Mekong sub-region since 2005. And just to give you a background, for those of you who are not very familiar with the region, it's the countries that make up the river basin of the Mekong, which flows from Tibet, 4,900 miles down kilometers to the bottom and flows out in the Mekong, the delta in Vietnam. So the countries are Myanmar, China, two provinces of China, Yunnan and Guangxi, flows to Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and part of Thailand. Now, this region is considered extremely important in terms of biodiversity. It's considered a biodiversity hotspot. A critical ecosystem partnership fund has designated it as one of the part of, most of the GMS belongs to the Indo-Burma hotspot, which has recorded large numbers of endemic species. 58%, for instance, 52% of all plant species in the GMS are considered to be endemic. 38% of all non-marine mammal species are endemic. 43% of amphibian species are considered to be endemic. The Mekong River itself is considered to be one of the most valuable or important rivers in terms of numbers of freshwater species. It consists of 1,200 species of freshwater fish, which makes up over 10% of the global world's total, and about 45% are endemic. And this, by no means, is the full story, because new species are being discovered on a regular basis. Just between in the last 15 years, between 89 and 2012, 1,400 new species were discovered in the Greater Mekong sub-region. It consists of 6 of the GMS, so global 200 ecoregions declared by the WWF, and of course, in addition to biodiversity, it also has rich natural resources. The river itself, the Mekong, which provides livelihood for millions of people, plus soil conditions and climate which are very conducive to lots of agriculture. So as a result of this, the region has been remarkably prosperous. It's experienced a period of rapid economic growth over the last 2 decades or so. And interestingly, most of this has been underpinned by its natural capital. For instance, just over the period between 2001 and 2010, GDP grew by from 200 million to 700 million, and it's expected to double again by 2025. In terms of other indicators of gross national income has doubled in the same period. In terms of other economic activities, its exports from the GMS have actually increased 10 times over this same period. Intra-regional exports or trade within the region has actually increased 24 times in this period. Tourism, for instance, which is one of the key sectors, is now a $30 billion industry which employs about 6 million people. So hydropower, tourism, agriculture, these are main sectors that have contributed to this rapid economic growth of this region. And all of them have essentially been on the basis of, developed on the basis of its natural capital. Now, ADB's own interest in this region is because of a regional, sub-regional economic cooperation program that has been supported since 1992. And through this program, ADB has invested something in the order of $17 billion, mainly in developing infrastructure. For instance, the program covers several key sectors. It works through sub-regional bodies called the working groups. It works on the transport sector, building transport corridors across the region, which have been now developed into economic corridors. There are working groups working on human resource development, working on the energy sector, developing infrastructure for developing energy infrastructure to share the for distribution of hydropower and other energy sources. There's a telecommunications program, working group which works with the tourism sector, agriculture sector, and one on the environment sector. So these have actually resulted at those programs have actually contributed to this economic prosperity. However, this prosperity has come at some cost. So, for instance, over this period, the region's lost a remarkable amount of its forest cover. 13 million hectares of primary forest cover has been lost in this region just since 1990. In Myanmar alone, 8 million hectares was lost. And of the original land area that was considered included in the Lugoma hotspot, it's only about 5% that still remains intact. So it's been rapidly degraded and encroached on due to this increased population growth as well as economic growth in this region. In terms of future, the future tends to continue to be fairly similar in terms of loss of species. There is expectation of 30 to 42% of all species to be likely to be lost by 2100. And as a result of this development, the region's ecological footprint has actually been increasing rapidly. So it's clearly on a pathway that is not sustainable. And many of the countries, Bruce put up a graph earlier about the biocapacity of the countries of the Asian region. Apart from Laos and Myanmar, all the other countries are net deficit in terms of biocapacity. So this region has some serious issues if it continues to develop in this way. And similarly, over the same period, the emissions from carbon dioxide emissions have also been increasing. In fact, a large percentage of this is from land use changes and forestry. Land use changes, forestry accounting for 26% of the carbon emissions. But in the coming future, the transport and energy sectors are likely to increase. The emissions from the transport and energy sectors are likely to be higher than from land use changes. So it's in this context that we've been looking at this region and how the environment program can support the integration of ecosystem services and inform planning, economic decision making. The future, as I said, in terms of the requirements for the future, it's quite dangerous because both in terms of food, water, as well as energy, the demands are rising rapidly. So, for instance, food demand, because most of the countries are moving towards middle income status, or China and Thailand are already middle income countries. Vietnam is close to being middle income, and therefore there's changes in dietary patterns of people with higher incomes. So the demand for food products are increasing rapidly in sort of processed foods, meats, fruits, vegetables, so less demand for cereals. Similarly, in terms of demand for water, both in agriculture as well as other industrial uses, the demand is going to rise. But here's a graph showing what the demand is going to be like for major cities in the region. So rapid increase in demand for water. And similarly, the demand for energy in the region is expected to go up very rapidly. So in terms of being able to sustain economic development in this region, it's clear that the countries need to take into account what they're doing in terms of the damage or doing to its ecosystems. Now, it's in this context we look at this region, and this program that we work on